Presidential candidate Bernie Sanders continues to rally support in California, one of the Super Tuesday states. According to Public Policy Institute of California, Sanders is the most favorable candidate amongst Latino supporters.
Meanwhile, Sanders is also touting a big endorsement. Yesterday, actor and activist Mark Ruffalo announced his support for the presidential hopeful.
So I proudly and humbly throw my support to Bernie Sanders. He will make an excellent and historic president in the very moment we are ready for it and need it most. He is the original progressive. In my humble opinion, he has earned it. We need a movement leader. We need a movement organizer. We need a leader who's actually one of us. And Bernie is one of us, and he's always been one of us.
Joining us to discuss all of this and more is Senator Nina Turner, national co-chair of the Bernie Sanders campaign. Great to see you.
Great to be here with both of you.
So let's talk about that endorsement first of all. I mean, you've gotten a number of big endorsements from Cardi B, Ariana Grande, now Mark Ruffalo. How do you think about these? Killer Mike, cannot forget, one of the originals, right?
Yes.
How do you think about these? What is their significance, and how do you leverage them on the trail?
Very significant. And Mark Ruffalo, what he had to say was just so impassioned. He's one of us. That is a connector. And, you know, Mark really, truly understands. I mean, he comes from a working class family. I believe his mother was a stylist. You know, his dad painted. And he really has never forgotten where he came from. He is one of the true activist types that we have. You know, people like him, people like Brother Danny Glover, you know, the same thing where these actors really put it on the line. Not just on the screen, but in real life, put it on the line for this country and standing up for their values, and it's really a beautiful thing.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about, Nina, is you spent a lot of time down in South Carolina as well as and around the South. We saw recently that we've seen a lot of speculation that the Senator Sanders is going to have a tough time wooing black voters, and then this is a narrative that's been out there almost since 2016. Now, even though he leads amongst younger African Americans, and I think he has the second highest support in the state of South Carolina. How are you seeing things shaping up within the South and Super Tuesday, because that's where a huge amount of the delegates are going to come from?
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, I mean, that has lingered since 2015. It was a deliberate smear on the senator, and quite frankly, that branding did work. It lingered. But what we see in South Carolina right now, I mean, the senator has 25 endorsements. 23 of those 25 are African Americans. 9 of those are members of the legislature. It is like night and day compared to what happened in 2016. The senator has visited the great state of South Carolina 11 times. He's been to almost 60 events. So again, just putting in the work. Unlike some other candidates, you know, you got some candidates who just are indifferent to African Americans, i.e. a certain mayor. And then you have other candidates who just want to ride the first black president's coattails. All candidates need to earn the black vote, as by extension, earn every voter's vote every single election cycle. But particularly the African American vote, as we know, will come into play in the South Carolina. Senator Sanders is not taking anything for granted. Our campaign itself is not taking anything for granted. We are out there, you know, knocking doors, making the phone calls. The senator himself is coming to that state. He was just there just this past Sunday. We went to church together at Reed AME Church. And it was a great experience. The senator talked about justice, and he connected all of his platforms, from Medicare for all to the environment, to reforming a legal system that is unjust in every single way, to the overall linkage to a justice platform. And I tell you, I told the senator, now he can be a preacher. He was handling that mic. He had his cordless mic, walking back and forth. Reminded me of myself a little bit. I think I'm rubbing off on the senator.
Well, he's been watching you for a few years now, so it wouldn't surprise me if some of that was rubbing off.
But that narrative is wrong. I mean, basically, that's really what I want to say. It's wrong. The senator is connecting. And unlike some candidates who are polling at either 0% or 1%, you remember last election cycle, some folks tried to make that a disqualifier for the senator. But fast forward to this election cycle, and all of a sudden, it doesn't matter.
Right, right. That's really well put. What do you make of former Vice President Joe Biden's durability of support with older African Americans? I mean, I don't think his debate performances have been particularly strong. He has a terrible record in terms of, I mean, he was part of architecting the 100-to-1 crack cocaine disparity, very integral in architecting the system of mass incarceration that we have, and yet no matter what he says or does, et cetera, he seems to have this sort of solid support among older African Americans, older people in general, frankly. Where do you think that comes from?
Short memories, number one, or not a true understanding of the history. Sometimes it takes a while for somebody's record to really catch up with them. The beautiful thing about this is that the younger generation sees it clearly for what it is. And then the other part is, in the African American community, especially among older voters, it's a reverence for President Barack Obama and this whole notion that if Vice President Biden was good enough for President Obama, he should be good enough for us. But younger people are having those conversations with their mothers, their fathers, their grandparents about really taking a critical look and a critical eye at these candidates, and that includes the Vice President. And so no one should be able to ride the coattails of the first African American president. You need to earn the black vote every single time that you run, and that really is my message. No matter who people want to support, make people earn it, and not just because of proximity. It really is an insult to the African American community. And I do want my community to wake up to the fact that the Democratic Party should not be allowed to just take us for granted every single election cycle and just know that over 90% of us, without fail, will vote a certain way and maybe even vote for a certain person. There is no other ethnic group. Think of one, no other ethnic racial group in the United States of America where people predict with that kind of laser focused certainty where the majority of that voting population is going to go. And so that gives the vice president, this kind of thought process that he can just say, oh, well, I'm going to get most of the black voters and most of them are going to be older, because that pattern repeats itself over and over again. So this has to be a two-way street. One, no politician should take for granted any group of voters. And number two, that particular group, i.e. African Americans that we're talking about right now, we should not allow ourselves to be taken for granted and to be considered anybody's firewall.
And so to this point, we saw a lot of people blaming internalized racism for the failure of Kamala Harris's campaign. As somebody who represents a campaign which is still in there, and a white candidate who is doing quite well amongst African Americans, and African American yourself, how do you feel about that?
Yeah. Listen, there is no doubt that systemic racism is real, and that it even bumps up against people as successful as Senator Harris. She is a black woman in America. That is baked in. And though, people are also looking at, whether you're black or somebody else, we should look at the person's platform and both their past record, their current record, and what they plan to do into the future. So those factors are real. It is real that Mayor Bloomberg, for example, can just come in and buy the election. So when Senator Harris said, in her remarks, I can't fund my campaign independently, I'm paraphrasing her, she really is right. So there are a lot of negativeness baked into the system, or unfairness baked into the system. Race and gender certainly is one of those, and also economics is another. And that is why we need real campaign finance reform in this country, because no wealthy person should be able to buy elections. And Mayor Bloomberg is just an example of that. But candidates like Senator Bernie Sanders, what makes Senator Sanders so unique is that he's been on this journey for a very long time. His consistency really is his strength. His authenticity really is his strength. So he's the only person on that stage who has been arrested because of, as a student standing up for civil rights. And then you fast forward decade after decade after decade, he has been on this justice journey for all people, and that resonates, and that is showing proof positive as to why he is performing so well.
So how are you looking at the state of the race right now? We're into December. We got this debate coming up 5 days before Christmas. Then we're probably going to have an impeachment trial in the Senate that's going to keep Senator Sanders and Senator Warren and Klobuchar and Booker and anyone else who's running locked down in D.C. essentially. And then you're into Iowa.
We are.
So how do you see this race shaking out? Are we getting down to the nub here? And ultimately, what's the path that you see to victory?
Our campaign is going to continue to do what we have been doing, which is the senator has 4 magnificent, the Fantastic Four national co-chairs, if I may say so myself.
No, we certainly co-sign that.
I'm one of those. But we have Mayor Carmen Cruz from San Juan, Puerto Rico, my dear brother, Representative Ro Khanna from California, and the Minister of Ice Cream himself, Ben Cohen. And also part of that team is a state layering of co-chairs as well, and then national surrogates from both grassroots leaders to grass tops leaders. We will continue to do what we've always done, which is to travel this country both with the senator and without the senator, laying mayoring all over the place. So our presence will continue to be felt as it always has been since the beginning of this campaign, because the senator's motto that when he says it's not about me, us, is real. And so we don't have to recalibrate our campaign because he may be in the Senate dealing with the impeachment trial. We're going to continue to do what we've always done, which is the senator has aligned himself with people who can go out from state to state and carry his message as he's doing what he took an obligation and oath to do, which is to be in the Senate and represent the people of Vermont by making sure that he's there for the trial. So we're going to be good. The pathway is to continue to do what we've been doing. I mean, we have 4 million donors, as you guys know. We have the biggest grassroots groundswell of any candidate that's running, and the senator has made lots of history so far. So it's not just the normal polls that we see. There are other measures to how a candidate is doing. We have the momentum, we have the energy. This campaign has it to sustain, because it's not just somebody winning the primary, it's can you win the general? And in order to win the general, you have to have an energy and a synergy that pulls independent voters, that pulls marginalized voters. There is only one candidate that is a movement leader, and that really is the fundamental difference between the senator and everybody else that's running, is because he has built a movement along the way that will sustain him.
All right, stick with us. We want to get more with Senator Nina Turner right after this.